Alright guys, welcome back to the Strength Enhanced podcast. This is episode 13. I'm calling this one Who Cares? Today we're talking about care. Who cares for you? Who you care for? What does care look like? And how do you know if you actually care about someone? This episode might be surprisingly a bit hard-hitting for some of us. I know that it actually is hard-hitting on me because there have been times where I've realized I don't actually care as much as I think that I do. I don't care about this cause, or I don't care about this person as much as I ought to. And so I really want you to prepare yourself and open yourself up to the possibility that, man, there may be an area of my life that I don't really care as much as I ought to. So we're going to start with the question of the day, and it is, who cares for you? This hopefully is a pretty easy question. Some of the more pessimistic people might go into a spiral and think, oh, nobody cares for me, I can't think of anybody who cares for me. But I think with that, when you really just stop and relax, you can see that there are a lot of people who care for you in one way or another. People who cook for you, whether it's your parent or your spouse, somebody else, a roommate, or somebody who checks up on you. That could be a friend, that could be a pastor, people who drive you around like a parent, or maybe even a grandparent, someone who prays for you. This is an easy way to show someone that you care, is by praying for them and asking them, hey, what can I pray for you for? And then over time, checking up, how is this situation in your life, the one that I'm praying for? How's it going? That is an easy way to see if someone is caring for you. So that is super important. We all know that we need care. And so when you find that person in your mind, take the time to thank them, whether it's through text or if you see them today. Thank them for their care, because care is important, and we want to reciprocate that care out to other people. And so that's what we're talking about. So, like I just said, everyone needs care. Luckily, even for those who are lonely, even for those who have not experienced a lot of care or don't have a lot of caring people around them now, even those people are cared about by God. God cares about every single person on this planet, and He wants relationship with every one of these people. He's not just someone who gives them good things but doesn't want relationship with them. He wants to enjoy their presence, and He wants them to enjoy His presence. You have a friend in Jesus, and so never think, ever, that no one cares for you, because the most important person who ever could care for you does. So I just want you to remember that. And so because we are made in the image of God, and we are supposed to reflect God's nature, we are supposed to care for other people. But this can be hard, because we don't have the same heart as God. We have a heart that's been twisted and turned to stone. Ezekiel 36 talks about how God has to give us a new heart of flesh. He has to remove our stony heart and give us a heart of flesh to actually care for people the way that He does. And so what happens when we have that stony heart? What does that look like? Well, we might not care about the people who are different than us. If they have a different background, if they have different clothing, I know that's a silly thing, or they just don't look the same as us, they're not interested by the same things that we're interested in, that can be a barrier between us caring for them. Or if you disagree with them, perhaps there are some things that are very important to you that are not important to them at all, or they're antagonistic towards those things. And so that can be another barrier. What about if they put you down? If they are constantly calling you names, or they're constantly saying bad things about you to other people or to your face, that can make it really hard to care about someone. Or there's just the chance that you don't click. For some reason, you don't get along super well with this person, as opposed to your best friend who you get along with great. So even when we find that there are people in our life we don't care about, it is possible to be cordial towards these people, right? You can hold the door for someone that has fallen into one of these four categories, and you don't really care about their well-being, but you'll hold the door for them, right? Because it's polite. Or perhaps you'll ask them, hey, how's your day going? Out of a formality. But you don't really care about how their day is going. You don't really want them to tell you how their day is going. So just remember that it's possible to be polite without caring about someone. And this is kind of the dichotomy that I want to expose in our heart, because this is a bad heart posture to have. God wants us to care about all people, and He doesn't want us to fake it. He doesn't want us to lie to people, because lying is wrong too. He wants us to have a true, genuine outpouring of care for all people. Now, these people may never know that you don't actually care about them in your heart. They may see your smiling face, they may see you holding the door and asking, how's your day? And they'll think, wow, that person is a great person. But at the end of the day, God sees your heart, and He sees what's going on, and He sees how wicked you can be. So I'm talking about this because I have a friend who was struggling with this concept of really genuinely caring for people in his heart. He realized that he wasn't doing that. And there were a couple of different ways that he realized that this was not happening. He told me about this at a Bible study. Someone had asked, what is your biggest trial in life? And after several guys had went around the room, they were talking about things like sexual temptation, porn, masturbation. We got to my friend, and he said, I have been very lucky in my life because most things have gone my way. I haven't experienced a lot of hardship. There has not been one thing that's bogged me down in my spiritual walk. Like I said, I've got pretty much everything that I want. No complaints. All of that has made me a terrible person. And that kind of quieted the whole room. Like, what do you mean? How could that make you a terrible person? And he said it was because he had gotten his way so much and he had had such an easy time that he expected it. From that point on, he expected it. If something didn't go his way, he would get very frustrated with the person who wasn't allowing that to go his way. And sometimes they had not so good reasons. So he told us about how his parents would tell him he needed to go to bed at a certain time. But he says, I'm 18. I have a legal right to do things that I want to do. And besides, if I want to stay up late playing video games until 2 a.m. and I'm quiet, I'm not disrupting anyone else in the house, what is that to you? Or he'd come home and his parents would ask him, hey, will you clean the dishes? And he'd say, I haven't been home all day. I've been working. These dishes aren't mine. Why do I have to do them? Like, someone else should be doing these. And so that was causing fights between him and his parents. Because, logically, he's correct that these responsibilities aren't necessarily his. Or he doesn't necessarily, by law or by logic, have to listen to what his parents say about staying up late. But he realized that his heart was in the wrong place. Another way that he realized this was he would do things that would be manipulative towards people in order to get his way. He didn't actually care about what the other person wanted in a certain situation. He only cared about what he wanted. And so, for example, he would reach out to some friends and say, hey, do you want to go play some tennis? And they say, yeah. But he realized that he didn't want to actually hang out with his friend, which usually is what kids want to do. He wanted to improve his tennis skills so that people could see how good he was at his sport. And when he would leave, he'd say, this was fun. Not because he had fun with the other person, but because he had fun improving himself. So he realized through all these different thoughts that every thought that he had was for himself. Now, this is probably making him sound like a really bad person because I'm exposing him in all these different ways. He has given me permission to tell this story. However, I think that a lot of people have done this. I know that I have done this. I think that most people are more selfish and more prideful, and they think about themselves more than they would care to admit. And so that's why I am talking about this. So what I'm not trying to do is I'm not trying to show this guy as a terrible guy, because he's not. Because he knows all of this. And what he does is he still acts the way that he's supposed to act, mostly. Sometimes he still argues with people. But he acts the way that he's supposed to act, but he wants to get down into the heart. He wants to fix the root problem, and I think that that is admirable. Because he said, I can do all of the right things for completely logical reasons, but I can't do the simple commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. He wants to love his neighbor as himself. So we love ourselves a lot, right? We do a lot of things in service to ourselves. But God calls us to love our neighbor as ourselves, to place people at the front of our thoughts before ourselves. And another thing is that I know the pain. I know the pain that he's in. He says he feels like a psychopath. Like he has no real emotional connections with people. And I know how hard that is because I felt that way. There have been people who are close to me that have passed away that I didn't even really feel a lot of sorrow for. My own grandma, who was very close to me, leading up to her death, there were days and days and days and days and days where I did not feel a single bit of sorrow for her. And I knew that that was somehow wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. And so today I want to talk about how we can cultivate care in our lives, because I think that that's foundational. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." The gift of Jesus from God began with God's love. And care is the first step in the love equation. If you don't get past care, you will not experience any of the other real relationships that there are in life. I just read The 4 Loves by C.S. Lewis, and he talks about the 4 different kind of relational loves that we can have for a person. The first is affection, the second is friendship, the third one is eros, or erotic, sexual, lover kind of love, and the fourth is charity, God's love. But what he says is that affection is the gatekeeper. You don't pass into any of the other loves without going through affection. And so if you are cut off from affection because of a heart posture, then you have to fix that heart. And so at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is selfishness and pride. Like I said, I'm not calling my friend out for this, but I've seen it in my own life. I know what it feels like, and I know that this is true. Selfishness and pride. When we're thinking about ourselves, when we're thinking of ourselves above other people, that's a problem. That's the problem we're facing. And so, during the course of the Bible study, I had a friend who dug out this verse out of James, section of verses really, and he read it all the way through, and it was a perfect choice for the situation. And I hope that it's a perfect choice for you, because you'll see what the problem is and how to solve it. So let's listen to God's word, because it does not come back void. It says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For while jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose that it is to no purpose that the Scripture says, 'He yearns jealously over the Spirit that he has made to dwell in us'? But he gives more grace. Therefore it says, 'God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.' Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you." That would be James 3:13 through 18, and James 4:1 through 10. So there are a couple of pieces in this that I really want to shine a light on. So in the first little section it says, "But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, Do not boast and be false to the truth. So, the truth. What is the truth? That you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart. Do not boast and be false about that. Do not say, I'm sinless. I don't have any bitter jealousies or selfish ambitions in our hearts. Everyone's got them. Everyone's got selfish ambitions. They want to be known. They want to be the best. They want to be seen as the best. They want to have the accolades. They want to have the rewards of being known. And so this is what my friend is dealing with. He's saying, look, I got places to go, people to destroy in tennis. Like, I can't be bothered with this stuff. Okay? That is a selfish ambition. And perhaps a bitter jealousy if he's comparing himself to another person. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's thrown in there too. But this is not the wisdom that comes from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Look, when you are focusing on yourself, that is a demonic force in your life. That is an earthly force. That's a carnal, fleshly force that is saying, you're great. Everyone needs to look at you. Everyone needs to see you. You deserve all this attention. But the scripture doesn't say that this is wisdom from God. The wisdom from above is first pure. So it's pure. It is untainted by these thoughts that try to weave themselves into our reasoning for why we're doing what we're doing. Are you holding the door because you want to help this person not have to hold the door? Or are you holding the door so that they will see you as a nice person? Don't let that intention become tainted. It must remain pure. Then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. Then it goes on and it talks about the quarrels and the fights that are being caused among you. Perhaps you have troubles with authority. Perhaps you have a parent who you disagree with about a lot of things. Perhaps you have a teacher. Perhaps you have a coach, and you're just constantly frustrated by what they're telling you to do. But what this is saying is your passions are at war within you. You have passions inside of you that are out of control. They're out of control. You need to bring those passions under pure wisdom, the kind that is characterized by all these things that I just said. You desire and do not have, so you murder. So Jesus said that if anyone hates his brother, he's a murderer. So if you are hating someone because you are not listening to their reason, you are not listening to advice for whatever reason, you have murder in your heart. And that is a really bad place to be. You need to pay attention to that. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. You may be thinking, look, I'm not asking for bad things. I'm asking the best people to play with me in tennis and not certain other people because I want to get a scholarship, or I want to stay up late playing video games because I want to spend time with my friends. Isn't it good to spend time with friends? Doesn't God say that you're supposed to engage in fellowship? But the point is, you've got to look at your motives. You've got to look at, okay, in the case of tennis, am I excluding certain people because I'm only interested in bettering myself? I'm not interested in spending time with them? Or in the case of video games, am I just doing it because I can? I can disobey my parents legally. Like, I just want to fight against their reasoning. You got to examine your motives. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So grace is a gift, right? He gives it to the humble. He gives it to the people who ask out of a pure heart. When you are proud and you think that you deserve something, that is when God resists you. We never ought to be in a position where we think, I deserve. I deserve is not in the Christian's vocabulary, because the only thing that we deserve is true judgment for our sin, right? We deserve to go to hell because of what we've done against God. But God has given us the gift of grace, which we received when we humbled ourselves, but it seems we've forgotten that that's how it came. We forget that we have to humble ourselves daily. And then it says, cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. There is a process for establishing care within your heart. You are supposed to recognize that it is sin, the kind of sin that would send you to hell. And at that point you should be filled with mourning. You should be filled with sorrow because you've seen the grace of God in your life to save you from those sins, but you keep going back to them. And so that should bring you to a place of repentance and say, God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe that I've done this again. I've disobeyed my parents. I've dishonored people in my heart. I've murdered people in my heart. God, help me. God, help me. And I've had to do this many, many times. Many times. Now, I'm not saying that this is not a hard thing. Sometimes when you are not in a position where you feel like caring about someone, it seems completely hypocritical to even try to drum up some kind of a care. And I believe that this is intentional in the grand scheme of things. I think that this is God's way of telling us, look, you can't come up with care for people. You know, you think it should be easy. You think it's like in Hallmark where you look at somebody and you just immediately, your heart goes out to them and you just feel things for them. But this is not always the case. Great genuine care comes from God. And so we have to ask God to give us that care. But in the meanwhile, that does not mean that we can't obey Him. Obedience is not dictated by how we feel. Just like love is not dictated by how we feel. You've heard people say love is a choice. And they are right. Love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. You can show someone you love them without feeling anything for them. And if you realize that you're not feeling anything for them, you should realize that's a disconnect that's happening. And you should always be trying to mesh those two things together, the feeling and the action. And that's what really makes an action beautiful, is when you can do it with your whole heart, when you can invest your entire emotional state into that action, because people can really tell the difference. People can really tell the difference. They'll say, wow, you're acting weird towards me today. Like, why are you so excited all of a sudden? Why are you so invested all of a sudden? And that is when the emotion meets the action. But the action is more important. You know, in the story of the father who came to his two sons and said, son, come help me out in the field today. There was one who said, I'll go help you, father, but he didn't come. And then the father said to the other son, come help me. And the son said, I will not come. But eventually he changed his heart and he went and he obeyed his father. And so that son was honored, whereas the first was not, because he said it with his mouth, but he didn't do it with his actions. The actions are more important. It's best when the emotion is there, but it's better to just do the action. So how do we get to the point where we can feel the emotion of care towards people? Because I think nobody wants to live in that state of constantly not caring for people. It makes you feel like a psychopath, and nobody wants to feel like a psychopath. So I want to tell you a story from my life where I had to learn how to care for someone. And this is a story about my sister. My sister is the closest of my 9 siblings in terms of age. In fact, out of all the siblings, we are the closest in age. She's less than 2 years younger than me. And when we were kids, we were rivals, complete rivals. She picked on me, actually, even though I'm older. I really couldn't stand up to her very much. She's a firecracker. She will run me over in a second. And so that was really hard for me as a kid because I didn't know how to handle her. There were times when I tried to fight her. There were times that I tried to love her, and it just didn't ever work. Nothing really ever worked. But in the meantime, I did terrible things to her. I said things that were not kind. I did things that were not kind. One time I got into one of those big blow-up balls that you like run around in. It's like a hamster ball. And she came up to me and then turned her back on me, and I ran full force into her back and knocked her down to the ground. Like on a hard gym floor, I did that because I was just like, ooh, this is a perfect opportunity. And that is not caring at all. So I realized over time that I had this problem in my heart. And so how did I deal with it? What I had to do was, first of all, I had to apologize. I had to apologize to her. I've apologized to her many times over the years just for different things that have kind of built up over time. And sometimes it feels like, why am I even apologizing for this? This was so long ago or so minor. There's no way that this is going to change anything. Like, how could this little thing be blocking our relationship? But it really does. Those little things people will remember, and even if they don't remember, they'll realize that you do remember. And you do feel sorrow for that, even after so long. Otherwise, you wouldn't say it, right? And so I apologized to her, and I forced myself to do kind things for her. I started giving her hugs, even when I didn't feel like it. There was no care in my heart for her. One time I remember specifically, I felt like the Lord was just saying, you know what? Give her a hug and give her a kiss on the head. And I was like, I have never kissed her on the head in my whole life. Like, that's not even something that our family really does. But you know what? I went up to her, gave her a hug, kissed her on the head, and I probably said, I love you. And that for me was like a stake in the ground. For like, I am going to care about you even if I don't feel like it. There were some powerful moments that led us to this place where I am today, where we actually have a good relationship. I never thought that we would have a good relationship. I thought that we would be rivals till the end of time. That was how bad it was. But it's through those little actions that you can truly show someone that your heart is changing. You can show yourself that your heart is changing. And so I think that that's beautiful. Another thing that you can do that I have tried when I felt it towards my own wife. There are some times when I felt like I don't even care about my own wife. I like that heart connection. It just isn't as strong as it ought to be, but I don't know what to do about it. And so what I have to do is I pull myself away from the situation and I say, what would make her happy even if I was not involved in this situation? Would it make her happy if there were flowers, beautiful flowers, on our kitchen table? If that would make her happy, then I'm going to go get flowers for her. And I'm going to imagine that those flowers just showed up. I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. But that would make her happy. Or maybe I think, what would make her relax right now? What would make her feel able to relax? Maybe it's a bubble bath. And I say, okay, so I'm going to draw her a bubble bath. But I'm going to think like I did not do that. Somebody else had a great idea that you should relax and you should take a bubble bath. That is how I love her. Because sometimes, a lot of times, most times, it's easy to do nice things for people when you think you're going to get something out of it, right? If I'm thinking, I'm going to do something nice for her so that she can be intimate with me later, so that she'll want to be intimate with me later, that is a completely self-centered and prideful way of thinking about it. And that's what we're trying to get away from. And so you need to do nice things for people that they would think are good even if you weren't involved. You know, they don't have to pander to your emotions. They can just be excited about what you've done for them for the sake of being excited. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish, guys. Look through your life, look through your relationships, find the relationships that you've realized, okay, I'm not really caring about this person. I am just doing things to get benefit for myself, and I don't want to do that anymore. Those are the kinds of relationships that you need to focus some energy on, okay? And it might be really hard. It might be easier than you think. But either way, God calls us to care about people. And so, that is my advice for you today. Please try to find that person. Extend care to them, just like God extends care to us. So, I hope that you guys appreciate this podcast. I hope that you appreciate this episode. Leave some comments for me. Share this podcast if you find it helpful. And I hope that you tune in next time to the Strength in Hands podcast. We'll see you next time.